And thank you, Nick. And I'll just jump on this bandwagon by saying I'm also a really huge fan of the UpTake. And actually didn't like you guys at first because one of my best friends worked with you during the Franken Coleman thing, and I just didn't see him for 3 months. But anyway, so I'm a huge fan of this work, so thank you for having us and Fair Vote Minnesota. So I'm here to just explain a little bit, not about, so that you can learn not just who you're going to vote for, but also how you'll vote. So in Minneapolis, we use a process called ranked choice voting. And what this means, simply put, is that instead of voting for one person, you get to rank your candidates in order of your preference. So you get to rank your first, second, and third choice. And in ranked choice voting, we require that candidates win with a majority of votes. That means they have to have 50% plus one of the total votes in order to win. So it doesn't, because you're ranking your candidates, it doesn't mean that you get more than one vote. It just means you're ranking your preferences so that if your the only time that your second choice vote will come into play is if your first choice candidate doesn't have enough votes to win, is the lowest vote getter, and is eliminated, your vote is not wasted. Your vote is then transferred to your second choice. So what that means for you as a voter is that you can vote your heart, vote your issues, and not have to worry about wasting your vote, which we often feel when we're gridlocked into two-party politics. So it's a good thing in my mind. So it gives you more choice and more power to elect the people that share your values. How do we get this process? In 2006, the people of Minneapolis voted on a referendum similar to the marriage amendment or voter ID, where we said yes or no, do we want ranked choice voting to be the way we vote for municipal elections? And people overwhelmingly said yes. And so we passed it then. We used it in 2009. But this year with a competitive election, it's really the first true test to the system. How is this different? So like I mentioned earlier, ranked choice voting ensures that candidates win with a majority, 50% plus one. But in the old system, we used to have 2 elections. We had an August primary and a November general election. The August primary is where we narrowed down the field of candidates to just 2. But the problem is that in Minneapolis, as low as 5% in some communities showed up to the primary, and as high as 10%. Which is a very small demographic of people that are choosing our 2 choices for us in November. And so this eliminates the primary, so we have more candidates to choose from in November. So I would encourage you, as you listen to the wonderful candidates tonight, I've had a privilege of getting to see you like 4 dozen times. And I still am undecided, crazily enough. But as you listen to them, I encourage you to think differently, not in terms of, who's the leading candidate or who is the party, or, think about the issues that you care about most, right? And think about who is strongest on those issues. Whoever is strongest, vote for them as your first choice. But if you couldn't have them, if they're not going to have enough votes to win and they're eliminated, then pick a second choice, right? Because you'd rather have a say in who is elected than not having a say. So I encourage you to use the full power of your vote and rank all the way down. It is your right to vote, and it is your right to rank your vote, right? So I encourage you, use the full power of your vote. Vote your first, second, and third choice. And with that, I'll leave you with the candidates.
Thank you so much, Anya. Thank you. Thanks for the candidates showing up. We have Mark Andrew, Dan Cohen, Don Samuels, Stephanie Woodruff, Betsy Hodges, Cam Witten, and Jackie Cherry Holmes. Thanks all of you for showing up. And now, the star of the show, Professor Nakima Levy-Pounds.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. As Nick discussed earlier, each of the candidates will have about 30 seconds, just really for a quick introduction. No need for a full opening statement, just a quick introduction. And then from there, I'm going to dive into some of the questions that we have received from people within the Twin Cities, also from members of the UpTake. And then there will also be questions from audience members as well. As Nick mentioned earlier, the hashtag for this event is MPLSMayor. Please feel free to communicate throughout this event if you have questions. and we have time, I will do my best to ask those questions. You can also tweet me at NVLevy as well. I will be monitoring the tweets as things unfold. So it's a privilege to be here with you all tonight. This is our third time together, and it's been fun, at least for me, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm not from Minnesota. I'm from California, and I'm used to just being straightforward. And what I've heard from people over the course of the past several months, since we all have engaged, is that they like the fact that you all are pressed to answer the question. And so I'm not trying to be tough. That's just kind of how I am. When I'm asking you to just kind of put the political speak aside and just get right to the heart of the matter, because the people have come here because they want to hear answers. Many of them are undecided, and this is an opportunity to really let them know how you're different from the other 30-some-odd candidates on the ballot. So with that, I would like to start with Jackie and have you introduce yourself. There is a microphone, and just please pass it along. Thank you. No. Well, one of the concerns is whether there are 2 or 3 people talking at once. So we're happy to do that if you all are. So we figure with one microphone, it might be a little easier to control the flow. Just like Thanksgiving dinner, passing the turkey.
If you want to split it up, just use one on one half, one on the other. Is that all right?
Whatever you all prefer. All right.
We won't be rude with each other because it doesn't benefit us to be rude with each other.
Right.
We're open for a cage match here, so.
That's the feel of one.
I know, we are in the auditorium.
Go ahead.
Good evening. It's good to be here with you this evening and good to be with our moderator again. She's done a great job the other times we've had her, and I think you have forced us to answer questions, and I think that's good. I'm Jackie Cherryholmes, and I am running for mayor. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Minneapolis. Grew up in the Seward neighborhood where my mom still lives and have lived on the north side for the past almost 37 years. I'm a wife, a mother of a 16-year-old, and I'm excited about the opportunity to share our ideas with you this evening.
I'm Cam Winton. I'm in the wind energy business. My colleagues and I built a company that maintains wind energy turbines across the country and overseas. My colleagues and I built the company to have 120 employees. We sold ourselves last year to the biggest utility in the country, and every employee kept his or her job and shared in the benefits of the sale. I'm drawing on that background to make it easier for everyone in Minneapolis to have a job, and to draw on my background providing services in the private sector to restore the balance between the property taxes that people pay in and the services they receive. I'm fiscally responsible, socially inclusive, and offering fresh eyes.
I'm Betsy Hodges. I have been on the Minneapolis City Council these last 8 years, currently chair of the Budget Committee. Proud of the work that I have done with Mayor Ryback and with my colleagues to make Minneapolis great, even in these tough times. My goal is to continue our progress to build and grow Minneapolis based on the common ground, take on our biggest challenge, which is the chasm we have between white people and people of color. In general, I will make a fantastic mayor. Please vote for me first choice.
I'm Stephanie Woodruff, and I'm running for mayor to put people first. I'm a lesbian, I'm a small business owner, and I'm also an appointed official for the city as Mayor Ryback's vice chair to the audit committee, which is a volunteer, non-paid position. I'm running for 3 things to make sure that Minneapolis has sustainable growth, that we become the smartest city, and that we do it in an open and transparent way to make sure that all of our neighborhoods are empowered. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Don Samuels, and I would love to be your next mayor. I'm from Jamaica. I came to the United States in 1970 at age 20, and with $83 in my pocket. I believe in transformation of your destiny, transformation of your community, of your city. I've lived my life that way. That's why my wife and I moved into the most challenged neighborhood in Minneapolis, because we believe it can be transformed. That's why our neighbors are the worst performing of the children of any city, of any part of the city in school, because we believe that they can be transformed.
Thank
and
you,
that's
Don.
what.
You'll have a chance to elaborate
Thank you.
later.
My name is Dan Cohen. I'm an independent candidate for mayor. I'm here to restore your basic democratic right to vote. You've been denied it twice. You haven't had the opportunity to vote on this Viking Stadium deal, the worst deal that's ever come down the pike. You haven't had the right to decide whether or not you want to have a downtown casino because it's been blocked by the legislature. These are two votes which you, as a people, the city of Minneapolis, should be entitled to vote upon, and I'm here to see that you get that vote.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Andrew. I'm running for mayor because I want to help make a great city even greater. I am a proven progressive leader. I have a long history in both politics and government. I own a green marketing company that has been successful in elevating the environmental performance of major buildings in our community. I have great passion. I have great vision. I have an strong record of achievement. I'd be honored to be the mayor of the city of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Let's give our candidates a round of applause. So we're going to jump right in. I want to pick up on something that Dan just mentioned. You talked about the Viking Stadium development, which we know is a hot topic. I was just reading Governor Arnie Carlson's blog, and the title is A New Viking Stadium and a Silenced Orchestra. Where are our priorities? Why don't you elaborate on your concerns regarding the Viking Stadium? And at this point, what will you do to protect the interests of the residents of the city of Minneapolis?
When you take the oath of office, you raise your hand and you say, I'm going to uphold the laws of the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, and the Constitution of the United States. And you don't uphold those laws, you don't uphold that Constitution when you commit your city to go into business with somebody that has been judicially certified as a civil racketeer. That's not the way you do business here. That's not the way you fulfill a contract here. And I'm saying that if this comes down to my desk, I will refuse to have this city participate in that contract. If Mr. Wolf wants to sue, I will tell you as a lawyer that's taken this newspaper all the way to the United States Supreme Court and beaten them there, I will tell you as a lawyer that if this comes before a Minnesota jury, there isn't a Minnesota jury that will vote to uphold this agreement.
Does anyone want to pick up on where Dan just left off? Go ahead, Don.
Dan, you're tilting at windmills. You can't reverse this. It's impossible. I appreciate your sentiment, but it's an emotional reaction. The city was going to be a silent partner in the stadium, whether or not we agreed with it. The state was going to pass it, and they had the legal rights to jump over us and do it. So the council and the mayor had two options: sit aside and be run over, or participate and help to dictate the conditions under which this thing is built. And so you're proposing spending all that energy instead of alleviating the achievement gap and the the employment gap and the jobs gap. You're going to get caught up in this legal principle when we got work to do. And this stadium is giving that because of the way we introduced it as a city council. The conditions under which I signed my agreement was we have to have 32% participation by minorities in the construction and after the construction of the stadium and for jobs. And that's what we do as officials. We get imperfect tools and we make a better product.
I'd like for Dan to respond, and then we're going to go to Stephanie.
Don, you're talking about giving this money for schools. You're taking
No, not the money.
You're taking the money away. You're taking $500 million away that could be used for useful purposes to be spent on a plaything for the rich, this stadium, and it's not going to go down. I will tell you as a lawyer, and you're not one, that this can go to judgment, and it will go to a judgment, and it will not be upheld in any court in this state. I know that. I'm a lawyer. I've done this sort of thing before. As for the benefits from this, I've heard that line before too. We had the Metrodome and we were going to have great developments and benefits, and we got Hubert's Bar and Grill. That was the great benefit we got from this. You want a benefit, I've got a benefit for you. It's a downtown casino. It'll go year-round, be a great tourist attraction. It'll provide jobs, not
And
just selling
we'll come back
popcorn.
to the issue
It'll
related
provide
to the
jobs
casino.
for every day of the year.
Thank you. Let's go to Stephanie, and then Jackie, and then Betsy.
Thank you. And Dan, it's not 500 million, it's actually 678 million in 30 years that we were sold down the river on this deal. You're being conservative. And then you add all the Target Center costs on top of that. Folks, I'm all for development. I'm a business owner. But you can't socialize the downside and privatize the upside. I love the Vikings. I love football. But when it comes to this deal, our neighborhood's got a raw deal. Totally. And the way that this deal was put together, yes, those are jobs, but they're not sustainable living wage careers. Those are construction jobs. All those jobs practically go away when that stadium is built. We've got to get back to the basics and put people first. It is shameful the way that this deal was done in terms of the lack of transparency and the way that we were sold out on this deal. $678 million, another couple hundred potential for the Target Center. That's $1 billion boondoggle for the next 30 years that could have been invested in our neighborhoods. Think about that.
If you're elected mayor, what would you do about it at this point?
You know, I am not an attorney. I have not looked at legally what we can do. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. We are heads down focused on just, you know, winning the election. So I mean, I can't comment on what I would do, but what I do know is that if I was the mayor, it would have been done differently. Cities build stadiums all the time. You have to create a win-win. You cannot socialize the downside and privatize the upside. Same with the Ryan deal. We're putting in a parking lot and a yard for $65 million for what? If a parking lot was so profitable, why isn't Ryan Companies doing it? My point is we've got to stop spending dollars on these projects and start investing in our neighborhoods. We start investing in our neighborhoods, we can lift everybody up and create living wage careers, pull our 1 in 4 out of poverty, and close that achievement gap.
Thank you. Let's go to Jackie.
I agree that there are some serious issues about the financing of the stadium. But let's be really honest, and I agree with Councilmember Samuels. We're getting into a really emotional place here. The fact of the matter is this deal is moving forward, and the jobs are real. You know, Stephanie, I'm just going to disagree with you. I love you to death, but I'm going to disagree with you. These are real jobs. A construction job, a carpenter job is not a temporary job. That person may end up building something else later on. And I would ask every single one of you, go over to Summit Academy. On the day that they're doing intake on Wednesday mornings, when they're taking people in who are going in for training, those folks are training for real jobs. They're training to be iron workers, they're training to be electricians, they're training to be carpenters, and those are not just jobs on this stadium. Those are jobs that will be with them for the rest of their lives that they can then build a career on. So these are permanent jobs. These are skills people are developing for a lifetime. But I want to go back to Governor Carlson's statement, because this isn't just about the stadium, this is also about the orchestra. In a balanced city, and a city that has a good economic balance, has both. You have the professional sports and you also have the orchestra. And what is happening with the orchestra right now is unconscionable. There is no leadership other than Governor Carlson around the issue of figuring out how we're going to save the orchestra. We can't be a city with no orchestra. What does that say about us? We got sports, but we got no orchestra? That's not the kind of city that I want to live in. So we have to balance and we have to focus on both. It's not either or. It's both and that makes a healthy economy in a city.
What type of leadership would you bring to the table that would ensure that that balance is there?
I would, on day one, even before taking office, if I can, establish a task force headed by Governor Carlson and a couple people from the business community, some people from the legislature, and some people from the city to figure out how do we keep the orchestra here and how do we fund the deficit while we look for long-term solutions.
Haven't people formed task force before that really haven't led to a sustainable solution? So is there an innovative approach that you would bring as a leader of the city?
I think pulling everybody together under the leadership of Governor Carlson is the first step. And with that, then we will analyze exactly what is the financial problem with the orchestra and preventing them from solving their problem on their own right now. I'm not in the the inner workings of that right now, so I'm not going to say we're going to spend X amount of dollars. I'm not going to say exactly what we're going to do because we need to get in there and discover what is going on. What are the barriers? I mean, I can't believe that we can't sit down at a table and figure out a way to solve this problem for the benefit of our state.
Thank you. Betsy, and then Cam.
Well, I think there was a choice that the city had, and I chose something else than 7 of my colleagues did. I chose to vote no. And most of that had to do with the opportunity cost. If the goal of a stadium is to have an amenity in the city that draws people here, that makes us a city that people choose to come to, if we're going to spend $500 million to do that, I say let's spend it on infrastructure, let's spend it on education, let's spend it on small business moving forward, because those things not only have those benefits, but they build on themselves. They build on themselves. They are public goods. And I said that, and I had concerns about the funding package, and I had concerns about the fact that we were supposed to do a referendum that we didn't do. But when the time came, and it was clear it was going to pass, I said, okay, we have to make this happen as absolutely best as possible for the people of Minneapolis as we can. The people of Minneapolis are paying twice for this stadium, not just once, like the rest of the state is doing, and it has to go well. So I was the only opponent on the implementation committee for that reason. You know, at that point, the decision's been made. So as mayor, I will do what I've done for the last year on the implementation committee, was do my best to think about the facility and the city's relationship with it. And I'll just say the reason that the Ryan project has a parking ramp associated with it is because it fulfills a requirement in the state legislation that you have that number of parking stalls in proximity to the stadium. That we do our very best to make sure that this is the transformative moment for downtown East, and that we continue to work to bring development here. It wasn't a project I chose, but it will be a project I lead.
Thank you. Cam, and then I want Mark to weigh in as well.
A few key facts. First, it could be the case that if the numbers work out, a Viking Stadium could be a good thing for the city. Second fact, this deal doesn't work for the city. This deal was built on quicksand. Third fact, it's clear as day in the city charter, and I happen to be an attorney, but you don't have to be an attorney to see it, clear as day in the city charter, that this deal should have gone to a referendum. I respect the city attorney, but she knew the outcome that her client, the mayor and the city, wanted, and so respectfully, she put her thumb on the scale and came up with a reading of the city charter that yielded the outcome of not putting it to a referendum. That was the wrong outcome. It's not supported by the facts of the law. So here's what I would do to answer your question precisely, Professor. Day one as mayor, I put in a call to the governor. I said, Governor, this deal's built on quicksand. It's time to go back to the negotiating table with all the stakeholders, the WILFs, the NFL, the state, the city, and see if we can come up with a better deal. Compare the deal that Minneapolis got to the deal that Atlanta got for the new Falcon Stadium. It's embarrassing what happened to us. And everybody's well-intentioned. Those who voted for the stadium, I revere Councilmember Samuels. That's an accurate characterization. I revere the man. Not just respect, revere. And he's well-intentioned for the city, but respectfully, I look at the deal we got and I say, that's a raw deal. So it's time to renegotiate to see if we can get a better deal. And then once that deal is baked, but before we do a bond issuance on it, we put it to a referendum as the city charter requires that we do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Well, I was in office in the county board for 16 years, but I was long gone by the time they took up the Viking Stadium issue. These are my observations about it. These were my own personal preferences. Number one, I sat on the county board when the city charter amendment got passed that requires a referendum if we're going to spend more than $10 million on a sports facility. I supported that action. Councilmember Nyland and others were deeply involved in that. I supported that. Therefore, I supported the referendum on the football stadium. However, that is a done deal now. The financing package was a mistake. Almost everybody up here will agree with that. My biggest problem with the financing package, besides using gaming revenue to make it work, because that is fool's gold. But my biggest problem with it is that Minneapolis taxpayers pay twice. We pay the state share, we pay the city share. Most of us agree that was a bad deal all around. The problem is the contracts are signed. The deal is done. Minnesota Vikings have put $50 million. They're spending it. So if you want a lawsuit that's going to last a decade, that's going to maybe bankrupt the city, go back and try to undo what's been done. We've got several thousand jobs in the offing on this project. Make the best of a bad situation. Let's move forward and let's create jobs.
Any response to what Mark just said?
Let's not move forward. Let's have the lawsuit if we've got to have a lawsuit and put an end to the thing. This guy isn't going to move his team to Los Angeles. The NFL isn't going to let him do it. The city of Los Angeles has a media that isn't in the bag to the owner here, because the media here, the newspaper here, is part of this deal. It's just a terrible situation. In my opinion, that we can put an immediate end to this thing, get a new owner, cut a better deal, and we don't have to put up with this situation any longer than it takes to tell this guy that we're not going to pay him a dime.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Betsy mentioned that she is on the implementation committee, and I appreciate the work she's doing there. And she says now that it's decided, she is willing to lead it. Let me tell you, leaders initiate, administrators administer. And I am the leader that made this difficult decision to create jobs, to lower our taxes by 3.5% because it took the target center off the tax rolls. And it's going to give us a facility that puts us on the map and gives us a Super Bowl in just a few years. So, all right. Now, regarding this, regarding the intransigent, I mean a Super Bowl between the two leaders, not the Vikings.
You're right about that.
Yeah. Now regarding the intransigence of Dan Cohen's position, there is nothing in the world. I'd love to see people make a stand, put a stake in the ground. I'm saying put a stake in the ground. And every kid in Minneapolis will graduate. And as mayor, I'm going to put everything will come to a screeching halt if that doesn't happen. Now, Dan is saying he's going to do that for the stadium. So I ask you to listen to what motivates people. What do people draw the line on? And what gets them all excited? And I'm saying every community will be safe. Every kid will graduate. That's what I draw my line on.
Well, one of the questions that just came in is, at what point is enough enough? When would you blow the whistle if you were mayor? And then who do you think failed the city on this stadium deal? Because many of you have said something is wrong, we need to recalibrate, we need to figure out what's going to happen going forward. So who failed the city?
You know, we keep forgetting that this is a state decision. The city was the one that concurred with the state voluntarily because we'd have had to do it involuntarily. This is a state decision. This is not really where this conversation should be had. We made a decision to avoid being rolled over and bowled over because the state had the legal right to build the stadium without us. And so we sat down as calculating decision makers, not as wimpy or capricious avoiders of process. We knew what would happen in this case. And we said, we better take advantage of this or we're going to be in trouble. And that's what we did. The mayor and I and Councilmember Johnson, three of the most rational people in the leadership of the city, led the other rational people to that decision. It is not an emotional decision. It was a rational decision to allow us to contribute to the way in which this thing was implemented. And as Betsy said, once the decision is made, all you can do is say how it's going to be done. And we wanted it to be done our way, meaning more jobs for more minorities, 32% unprecedented minority participation in the stadium.
Stephanie, we'll have just 30 seconds for Stephanie and Jackie.
You know, Don, I appreciate your passion, and I love you dearly, but if it truly was the state's project, then let them pay for it. I mean, $678 million over the next 30 years. Yes, those are jobs, and Jackie, I didn't say they weren't jobs. They are jobs, but they're not sustainable living wage careers for the $678 million that we will pay for the next 30 years. Yes, those construction workers go somewhere else. Think about what that money could have done to the neighborhoods. Think about all of the jobs and the housing and to fix our education issue, the number one issue facing this city. Yes, we should always go to the table and be part of those projects. But the way that that deal was done, you cannot socialize the downside and privatize the upside. It does not win. It does not win in the long run. I have a fear that that project alone is going to bankrupt this city over the next 30 years because all of the unforeseen things that could happen in the economy, who knows what can happen? And it's upsetting that the next mayor has to inherit all of these obligations that worry me that really aren't worth that kind of money. I would rather take that money and invest in the neighborhoods.
Thank you. 30 seconds for Jackie, and then I'm going to shift to another question.
There is a lot of frustration around the stadium, and I acknowledge that. But when the question is sort of who's to blame, I don't live in a world where I'm casting blame about stuff like this. Everybody took their vote and made the decision they made based on the best information that they have. I respect Councilmember Samuel's vote, and I respect Councilmember Hodges' vote. It's one of those places where you disagree. Adults can disagree. People take their vote. And I believe that everybody in public service was making the best decision they could make based on the information they had in front of them. Now we need to figure out how to make it work.
Thank you. So next to me is James Everett, who is one of the other candidates for mayor. And you're here saying that you disagree. So I want you to say why, and then I want you to pose a question to the candidates as well.
How y'all doing? I'm James Everett. I'm running for mayor of Minneapolis under the Green Party as well. Thank you, sir. When you say it's the best deal, my issue is community benefits agreement, the threat of him going to, we lost the Minneapolis Lakers before, and we got the Timberwolves. We lost the North Stars, we got the Wild. How could Ziggy Wolf talk about going to Los Angeles where the Staples Center was built by the community benefits agreement all the way through? And then he could threaten to go to a place where he would have had to do a community benefits agreement, and he comes here and doesn't have to do anything where he's currently at. So when you tell me you made the best decision, that's completely impossible when our foundations alone could have bought the team, and we could have owned it, and we could have funded ourselves. But that's where the bureaucracy comes into play. So tell me, am I wrong? Because I wasn't a part of the vote. But am I wrong about the fact that there should have been a community benefits agreement if the place where he was threatening to go was going to make him do one? And so that's my question.
Any response? Should there have been a community benefits agreement?
I didn't vote for the stadium, but I have some thoughts on what Mr. Everett said.
Go ahead.
James, always good to see you. For anybody who doesn't know James, and I'm not just saying this because I want your vote, which I do, but also saying it because James is a remarkable community leader, and get to know James and the work that he does.
Thank you very much.
So, James, you heard me when I said a moment ago that maybe I didn't say it quite this clearly. If I had been on the city council, I would have voted no. If I had been the mayor at the time, I would have put the question to the referendum, as I read the city charter to require. That said, even if there's not something in the agreement called Community Benefits Agreement, capital CBA, there is a piece of the agreement where there are, as Councilmember Samuels described, requirements for the Vikings organization and the construction contractors to hire a certain percentage of workers who are minorities, to contribute a certain amount of money to different causes and events. And so as I read it, I still don't like the deal, I would have opposed it, but I do see things in there that get at the things you're looking for. Yeah, and so perhaps I'd pass it off to somebody who voted for it to speak to in more detail.
Jackie has asked to weigh in, and then we'll.
I think Cam is correct. The large part of the responsibility is in the documents and the legislation that was negotiated by the legislature. And Senator Champion took a huge role in crafting that language. Senator Champion was a champion for our communities and for folks in the neighborhood to ensure that there was participation by, as Councilmember Samuel said, the 33% women and minority-owned businesses and labor force. So Senator Champion was an aggressive advocate for, maybe it wasn't called a community benefits agreement, but I think if you read the legislation, you will find that there are very specific requirements about job hiring fairs, about hiring, about outreach, all of those things that would normally be included in a community benefits agreement wasn't entitled that.
But I would say part of the problem has to do with economic development when you look at minority-owned businesses and small businesses and whether they're actually getting their piece of the pie. And we're talking about businesses within the city of Minneapolis and the fact that there have not been adequate checks and balances to make sure that those businesses are able to effectively compete for contracts. This is important because minority-owned businesses are more likely to hire other people of color. And here we are in a city where we have, 40% people of color, but an extremely high unemployment rate. So again, the checks and balances are not necessarily there, which I think is what James is getting at. So as the next leader of this city, what are you going to do to make sure that the ultimate outcomes are equitable, that you consider the little guy in making these decisions?
And I want to make sure that we don't get spun off on it. And I didn't want to interrupt, but it's important that the community benefits agreement, because it can be legally bound to it. But also, last time when we were talking about the stadium, it was building stuff, we were talking about taking it out of the, putting it with the county instead of the city, so it didn't have to meet the requirements of the when Mr. McLaughlin was running in 2009, the last run, and they took it. So my question. Can't hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to slow everything up, but I'm saying that the community benefits agreement has been a proven way to get the results. And so when you talk around it and say it's kind of like that. Again, Senator Champion, as much as I love him, has no background in community benefits agreements. And so my thing is that the minority hiring thing came from the state. It's not like we became benevolent at the city level. So let's not, give me some real answers. I know what you're saying, but I want to hear the real answers from them, because I'll just pass it from there.
And the first part of your question is, I didn't vote for it, which I've said before, but I was on the team of city council members who worked hard to make sure some of these requirements were made in the legislation. And I know that some of the folks leading, Councilmember Samuels, Council President Johnson, were in those negotiations. But we as a city have increased our minority and women-owned business hiring goals. We have set higher standards, and we've been meeting those standards. And we made sure those were the standards that were included. It's not a community benefits agreement, but it's actually written in the legislation. And we were advocates, even those of us who knew we were voting no, we were advocates for that, strong advocates for making sure that that was part of what was happening moving forward. And then when on the implementation committee, the work I did there was to make sure that it was part of our vision moving forward, that not just the construction jobs, but the jobs that were created inside the facility ongoing afterwards, we would also have those hiring goals there as well. Because we want to make sure all the jobs associated with the stadium have that. But again, I didn't vote for it, but this is one of those instances where, look, if it's going to happen, I want to have it happen as best as possible.
I'm going to throw out a different question. And the next series of questions will actually focus on issues of economic justice and increasing access to employment. So Minneapolis is quickly becoming a city that is divided between the haves and the have-nots. What will you do as mayor to reverse this alarming trend?
I'm happy to start.
That's fine.
This is the core of my campaign. This is the core of what I'm running on, is that we are a great city and we have our greatest challenge, which is the gaps we have between white people and people of color at every single level. And so the first thing as mayor is to know that, acknowledge it, say it out loud, and set up your administration and your mayorship to have that as the key issue moving forward, because that's crucial for the future of the city. Practically speaking, it's partnerships in education. I can talk more about what the mayor can do, but for me, directly, it has to do with housing and my Cradle to K program. For building and growing the city, making sure everybody gets the benefits of that, you have to do it based on the common ground. It can't just be about who your friends are or who you made the deal with, but open common ground, and that includes transit and transportation. They're huge economic development generators. You can put it throughout the city, and rails especially give confidence to investors that will be there into the future. And then specifically inside the city enterprise, there are places where the public gets involved in the private to help create those opportunities. I have worked hard for the Civil Rights Department to make sure that our women and minority-owned business opportunities and expectations are being met. Everything has to be seen through this lens that we do in the city of Minneapolis. Everything we do, our health department, affordable housing, our employment options and opportunities, building the city, partnership, and education.
Thank you. Stephanie? And then Don.
Great, thank you. Yes, this is a big part of my platform in terms of putting people first and putting people over politics. My plan is to make sure that we're actually, that we stop spending on these crazy projects and start investing in our poorest neighborhoods. Particularly, we need to start investing on the north side, on the north part of our river, particularly the Upper Harbor Terminal, to make sure that we can create sustainable living wage careers and to make transit decisions, right, that improve the livability of those neighborhoods. If we can focus on our poorest neighborhoods, right now we live 1 in 4 in poverty. That's almost 100,000 people. That's 37% higher than the national average. That's unacceptable. And that's a big reason why we have the worst achievement gap in America. This is a poverty issue. The only way we're going to disrupt poverty and to fix our education issue is to make sure that we have living wage careers, but we've got to do it. We can't do it in a vacuum. We have to make sure that we're creating those careers and that we have adequate transit to move those folks to those jobs. That's the biggest challenge. I listen to people on the north side all the time, and actually people on the south side. That's their biggest challenge is a lot of these families only have one car. And we've got to be able to move these folks. We've got to make smarter decisions and invest in people and put people first over projects.
You said that you have a background in business, though. What specifically does that mean?
I own a software company. I've launched several companies. I started my career at Cargill, so I've done the corporate America, and then at Deloitte & Touche, all the way from one of the largest privately owned companies in the world to launching companies.
How does your business experience translate into what you're saying?
Yeah,
that you plan to do to address this issue?
Yeah, in terms of, and then being a consultant to my clients in terms of how to take a problem and actually know the difference between spending versus investing. And I've done a lot of strategic planning where I look at something and say, okay, we've got to make decisions that are 25 years out. We've got to create value. I've launched companies and have created hundreds of millions of dollars for my employees, taking companies public in terms of having a goal and a strategic vision and working and breaking that down and saying, okay, I quote Stephen Covey all the time, keeping the end in mind. If we have the end in mind, what are those critical success factors that we have to do in staying on course? You're going to have stuff thrown at you. You're going to have challenges. But I am the master at execution, laser-focused execution, even during tough times. And that's what, my business experience brings that's different.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, I think this is a frightening thing that's happening. It's not just Minneapolis, it's nationwide. The rift between rich and poor is getting wider, and the haves and the have-nots, and that's why we have the concept of the 99%. But let me tell you, that's why my wife and I moved into the toughest neighborhood in the city. That was our investment in the Jordan neighborhood and in Minneapolis and in the future of the United States of America. We had no illusion that we were doing anything less. This is something we talked about. What is the biggest contribution we can make with our lives as an African-American couple? We can reverse the brain drain of black middle-class flight and move into the poorest neighborhood, sacrifice the growth in equity in our real estate, send our children to private school because the school down the street was just graduating, was failing, or had I think, 12th percentile in math and 9% in reading. So we had to send our kids across town, and $25,000 for their school fees. That was our investment in America and in our community. And that's the kind of energy I'm taking into the mayor's office. Sacrifice and investment for the least to break this rift down. And we can do it, and we must say our children must perform at the highest level. There is no excuse. If you are teaching one of our children, you better be the best. Because if you're building a stadium, you're going to have to be the best. If you're going to play on the team, you have to be the best. If you're teaching our kids, you have to be the best. And if you're working with our children, you have to be the best. And our school, and if you're policing our people, you have to have the best behavior. And we must have the safest community, no matter what the economic condition or the zip code.
Thank you, Don.
No excuse.
Thank you, Don. I see Dan chuckling, so I just want you to chime in.
Well, I just want to say that I'm proud to be on this panel because everybody I'm hearing here, I think, is on the right page. Everybody here wants to have the kinds of progressive programs that make it possible for our minority kids to have good lives, to be competitive, to have good jobs, and we'll do everything possible to get it done. And whomever you choose to be mayor of Minneapolis, I think you can be proud you're going to have someone that really cares about this issue and makes it a centerpiece of their efforts. And I will say this about Mayor Ryback. Amongst all the mayors that have come down the history of this city, this is the first mayor that has really focused on education and made it a centerpiece of his mayoralty. And that has called on us, has made us as candidates to succeed him, to be people that have to follow that example, and I'm proud to be part of it.
What would you do specifically?
Well, let me just start with what I'm doing specifically. Right
Take
now,
about 30 seconds.
Let me start with myself. Let me start with myself. If you look at my own campaign, my campaign is staffed overwhelmingly by African Americans. Overwhelmingly, my campaign manager is an African American, and he works not just for me, but he works as a minister counseling offenders, trying to find them jobs and work, and trying to help them both out at the workhouse every Wednesday. He has a program.
What
he has
about
a program
you
down
in
with the Y.
particular?
As mayor, I will extend every single effort that I've got in order to bring these kinds of programs to fruition, not just for myself, but for all the minority citizens of this city. And I hear these programs being expressed, and I want to be part of them, and I want to help follow through with them. And Don, I think, has really got the bull by the horns here amongst all the candidates. He's made this the focus of not just his candidacy, but of his life, and I want to be part of that.
Thank you. Mark, why don't you pick up there and share with us how, as a leader, you will specifically help to close some of these gaps?
Thank you. I'm glad you said as a leader, because this, like every issue the city deals with, is about leadership. I listen to my friends and colleagues up here. I have a hard time disagreeing with anything any of them is saying about this issue. But here's the truth. Race is the American conundrum. It has beleaguered this country for 200 years, and we're not out of the woods with it yet. Our own community that we all love, everybody up here loves the city. They're running for mayor because we all love the city. And yet we're one of the most segregated communities in the country, economically, socially, even geographically. We've got a lousy record. So I'm going to echo a couple of things that my friends up here are talking about, and then maybe add some other things around leadership. First of all, Betsy and Jackie both talked about education. I think the issue, and Jackie talked about jobs. Education and jobs, jobs and education. It's the short-term solution. It is the long-term solution. And a mayor can do a lot of things to help close those gaps, working on those issues.
Like what?
First of all, Glad you asked. Equity building in our communities. I am known as an expert collaborator. I have a history on the county board and in my private environmental marketing business of working with government, private sector, city, county, schools, parks, nonprofits, neighborhoods, families, individuals. Everything we do moving forward has to be about collaboration. And collaboration does two things. First of all, it helps make the programs we're working on run better. And secondly, oftentimes, it helps make those programs run less expensively. A mayor can go into a community and do the equity building, partnering with neighborhoods, families, nonprofits, and other government jurisdictions to make our communities safer, our schools more inviting for the kids to go to school there. I'm appalled that we have 2,000 kids in the Minneapolis School District who go to school, or in North Minneapolis, who go to school in the suburbs. I listened closely to Don Samuels about this. It's an outrage, isn't it? Do we all agree that's an outrage? Part of that problem is that we haven't figured out how to do the community building and the equity building that will make our schools safer, more welcoming, and a place where mom wants to walk down the block to put their kid in school instead of busing the child out to Hopkins or some other community. And a mayor has tremendous influence on the notion of equity building through collaboration. Another thing that a mayor...
I'm going to have to stop you right there. Jackie is...
Can I come back?
To chime in. Yes, you can.
Later? Thank you.
Go ahead.
You know, I think we started the question talking about jobs, employment, and inequity in employment. And I just kind of want to come back to that. I mean, first of all, I will say that we are in an incredibly segregated city, and it shows in our statistics around disparities in health, in income, in housing, in education, all around us. I want to focus on jobs because if you're not working, nothing good is going to happen. If you're not working, nothing good is going to happen for you or for your family. You aren't going to be able to afford your place to live. Your kids aren't going to do as well in school, so folks have to be working. One of the things that I bring to this position is I've run the city before and I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire someone who is solely responsible for creating jobs in Minneapolis. Secondly, we're going to reinstitute the Industrial Development Commission, and we're aggressively going to go after manufacturing jobs, clean manufacturing jobs that pay a living wage for people in our city. Thirdly, we're going to reinstitute our Small Business Assistance Program to provide loans and grants for those small businesses that want to locate and develop in our city, because we know that small businesses hire more people than anyone else, and small businesses are more likely to grow in a tough economic time. Those are three very specific things that we're going to do, and I'm not waiting to do them till I'm mayor. I've established the Northside Job Creation Task Force along with Bill English. We started it 2 years ago. We've identified 3 manufacturing businesses that are interested in locating in Minneapolis, and we're working with the Carlson School of Business and the University of Minnesota to bring those businesses to Minneapolis. Not a government effort. It was an effort started by some folks who were just concerned that we didn't have jobs growing in our city. So it's about leadership, it's about knowing how to get it done, and then it's about doing it. Not talking about it, but doing it. And that's what I'm really good at doing, is figuring out what we're going to do, connecting the dots, and then getting it done.
Thank you, Cam.
I'll echo what's been said, that the city's spoiled for choice. Everybody up here is well-intentioned. But on this topic, it's a really good example of how I'm offering fresh eyes. I'm the one candidate on this stage who's not coming from a background of being an elected or an appointed official. I'm in business, as I said. My coworkers and I built a company of 120 employees who maintain wind energy turbines across the country. I sit there with a spreadsheet and a checkbook each month with my team, and we decide if we're going to hire people. Man, I always want to hire people. There's nothing better than hiring somebody except giving them a bonus check at the end of the year. Well, one better than that is giving them an equity check when we sold the company. But there are a few things better than hiring someone. We hire someone when we can make money by hiring them. And we deploy our capital into places where the level of taxation and regulation is predictable and reasonable. What that means in our city is that we have to cut the red tape that City Hall generates. Right now, there are 160 different types of license that City Hall maintains. If you want to have a jukebox, you have to get a jukebox license. Sell a Christmas tree, that's a totally separate license. On top of that, you have to go downtown to get that license. Let's stop talking from 30,000 feet up in the air about broad platitudes, and let's get down to right where the decision's made. If I can make money by hiring people in Minneapolis, I'm going to do that. But if it's going to be easier in Bloomington, guess what? I'm going to go to Bloomington. I want to make it so that for every would-be job builder, job creator, it's a no-brainer to come to our city. And right there with it is education. We all care about education, but I hope we have a whole answer on that, because there are also some big differences between the candidates on this stage about the changes we would make in policies to make sure that we're putting kids first in our schools. When we put kids first in our schools and make it easier for people to start and grow companies here, we'll close those gaps.
Betsy, part of the challenge is, can we wait that long? Because you have people right now who are out of job, who don't have a job, who are out of school.
When it's my turn,
Betsy, and then I'll come back to you because I want you to answer that.
I mean, I'm happy to talk more about this because it is the most important issue that is facing the city of Minneapolis moving forward. And in the biggest picture, yes, we have got to grow the city. We have got to bring more people here and more investment here. For me, one of the best ways to do that is transit and transportation. I spoke a little bit about that in my answer first, but one of the things I want to say is that, for example, a West Broadway streetcar line, because you know, North Minneapolis shouldn't be a quick ride. You know, you shouldn't have to go through North Minneapolis to get somewhere else. North Minneapolis should be a great place to live and a great place for people to come to. And our investment in transit and transportation can make that happen. It can spur an upward spiral of growth and development in North Minneapolis. It's one of the reasons when they were deciding the route of the Bottineau line that my husband, actually, who is the Met Council member in North Minneapolis, and I worked together with a whole bunch of folks to make sure that the 5 and the 18 bus got you know, moved up the queue for enhanced bus amenities, but also made sure that the West Broadway streetcar line got its due as well to connect it to that Bottineau line, because I know that we need not just to bring people to jobs. That's important. Transit is important for that. But permanent transit investments brings jobs to people. And it can do that in North Minneapolis. It can do that in other parts of the city. It has a whole bunch of other benefits, but that's not what we're talking about right here. There are other, if you want to go to betsyhodges.org and check out the plans that I have, there's a whole lot of other specific things we can do. Out-of-the-box thinking, like do more with social enterprise. That's working in the city right now. You know, the whole answer about education that I think we're going to have. But right now is when we as a community get to decide that not just should this end, but that we will end it. And we get to put our collective hearts and minds and passions together to make sure that this is the generation that ends this and that we are a beacon to the rest of the country about how to get this done right.
Thank you. Kim, 30 seconds.
Sure, and to make sure I'm understanding the question, Professor, what I hear you saying is there are people, and if so, I absolutely agree with this. There are people.
There's an urgency now. We can't wait. Not that the education system doesn't need to be fixed.
Right.
We all agree that it does.
Right.
But we can't wait until it's fixed to address this jobs issue.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And so I submit to you and to everybody at home that if we cut the red tape that the Public Service Center, diagonally across the street from City Hall, is generating currently, we will see a flood of dollars into our city. I say that as a city homeowner and resident and husband and father, someone, as all of us do, care deeply about the city. As you probably know, Professor, the Fortune 500 companies alone, the 500 largest companies in the United States, have $2 trillion, with a T, dollars in capital just sitting on the sidelines because they're uncertain about certain regulations coming down the pike. So if we in our city, you know, we think globally but act locally, if we cut that red tape, we will see a flood of capital from the Fortune 500 companies that exist in our neighborhood and nationally and globally when we make Minneapolis more attractive. And when that capital comes in and people, you know, for example, I know I'm up on my time, but here's one concrete example. Medtronic needed to start a call center. Medtronic's in our backyard. It's this amazing company. If memory serves, they started in either San Antonio or Arizona, somewhere in the Southwest. Oh my gosh, what a missed opportunity. We should have started it right here in our city. And North Minneapolis, I think we could all agree, is the place where we need more jobs more than anywhere else in the city. So that's the kind of thing that next time when Medtronic's deciding where to build that call center for $100 million, boom, right in our backyard. So I think it'll happen fast and address that urgent need.
Stephanie, did you want to chime in before we get to Don?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I think it's less about regulations, and in that deal is more about tax incentives. I mean, look at Target, right? They built their facility up in Brooklyn Center. I mean, that should have been done in North Minneapolis. I mean, so I agree with you. We need.
That cuts in support of what I'm saying.
Right, but that city gave them a lot of tax breaks to do that. So it's not necessarily. I mean, we have 50 of the Fortune 500 here that are very, very strong, and we need to be more business friendly in terms of extending that hand to make it a win-win. Because I mean, those types of jobs are critical, and we should not be losing out to the Targets and other cities where they want to expand. They should be looking at Minneapolis first.
My economic development plan and jobs plan, which is posted on my website, talks about the City of Lakes Investment Fund, which would set aside money raised from the city and the state and the private sector to fund relocation costs and startup costs of any company that agrees to move to the city and employ local folks. And one good example, I was talking to one business owner just last week who has a business up in New Hope, and they make motors, work that livable wage, that people take 2 buses from Minneapolis to get there to do the jobs. He said, I want to move this business to Minneapolis, but I can't convince my guys if there was just a little incentive. That's the kind of place where the City of Lake Investment Fund would come in to fund that relocation, help fund those relocation costs so people don't have to take 2 buses, save that money, put your business in North Minneapolis and have jobs. I'm also proposed Project Greenlight that would expedite the development process for companies that do business well, frequently with the city, and have the capacity and demonstrated capacity to go through the process and to do the job well. They don't have to go through the same hoops that everybody has to go through. The whole process for our licensing and permitting process is to make sure things are done well. And so we're going to fast track them through the system, and then and they'll have less obstacles in the way of development.
Dan, and then I'm going to...
Well, let's talk about everybody's non-favorite subject, gambling. We have gambling all over the city of Minneapolis. We have gamblers, and they're all going out to Mystic Lake to gamble. We're losing 22 busloads of gamblers every day going out to Mystic Lake to gamble. And along with them, we've got retail businesses going to Mall of America, and even as we sit here, Mall of America is being considered by Canterbury as a possible source for a gambling casino out in Bloomington. It's about time we took a realistic look at this. There's gambling downtown casinos in Kansas City, in Milwaukee, in Dubuque, in St. Louis, and it's about time we took a look at the opportunities this provided in terms of year-round permanent jobs, paying taxes, getting people in places like hotel jobs, restaurant jobs, all the kinds of collateral jobs that casinos furnish, and you don't have to like gambling. You can let the tourists do it because it's a year-round tourist attraction. It isn't just something for the people here. Let me just say this. The people that voted for the Viking Stadium deal voted for gambling. $350 million worth of the worst gambling proposition there is, pull tabs. The worst gambling proposition since Russian roulette. That has been a total failure. What I'm talking about is a substitute, something that does a better job in terms of providing jobs, that doesn't take advantage of the gamblers in the same way that something like pull tabs does, and is competitive with the existing place out at Mystic Lake. And as you and I all know, competition means a better deal for the consumer. So I'd like to suggest we take a hard look at doing this, and all I'm asking for, you don't have to like it, you can vote against it, is a vote, is to get the legislature to let us have a vote on this and let the people decide. And I think if we do, I think we're going to have these casinos.
Thank you. Mark, I want you to pick up there. I see heads shaking in the audience. I'm assuming there's some people who disagree. So we'll have you pick up there, then we'll go to Jackie.
Okay. But we're talking jobs. My belief continues to be education and jobs, jobs and education. And the way to accomplish those things, if you're running for mayor, is to be a proven progressive leader. I have a record of being a proven progressive leader. Number one, I'm a builder. I believe a big part of the strategy for creating employment in our city is to have a mayor who says we are going to, in part, build our way out of the problem that we are facing with high levels of unemployment in communities of color. I have a vision. I want to redevelop the riverfront. I want to redevelop Hennepin Avenue from the Walker Arts Center down to the Mississippi River. I want to green it. I'm strongly endorse Councilmember Hodges and Council President Cherry Holmes and Councilmember Samuels on transit. Transit leads development. Development leads jobs. We need transit. So we're going to have streetcars if I'm mayor. We're going to have expanded light rail transit. We're going to have more efficient buses to Cam Winton's proposals. We are going to have bikeways like the Midtown Greenway that I was the chief author of creating. Those things are jobs-intensive activities. They will create jobs, they will attract people into the city, and they will allow us, both short-term and long-term, to go about the business of creating a better climate for employment and education for our city's residents.
Yes, Jackie, thank you.
I guess I kind of live more in the here and now. And we need to do some things now. We have 50% of our African American and Native American men are unemployed now. Not a ways down the road, but now. So what are we going to do now? And I think we need to start to figure out, how do we keep jobs in the city? We have jobs leaving our city. As a consultant for the last 12 years working with small businesses, I've seen jobs just go on out of here. We've lost jobs out of North Minneapolis. We've lost businesses because there's no mechanism at the city right now to keep those jobs here. There's nobody who is responsible for ensuring that those jobs stay here, who says to those businesses, how can we help keep you here? How can we make this a place that's attractive for you to be? We need to do some things now. And with all due respect, I love the idea of a streetcar on Broadway. But you know what? It's not going to happen fast enough to save West Broadway. I chair the West Broadway Business Coalition right now. The streetcar is not coming fast enough to save that street. We need to have better bus service. We need to have safer bus service. We have to have ways for people to get around now. Great to plan for the future, and I'm all about a big vision and planning for the future. But by the same token, when you're talking about what's going to happen in the future, you've got to be dealing with what's going to happen in the here and now. And that's what frustrates me about the conversation. One other thing that I just have to say, and I have struggled with whether or not I should say it, is we talk a lot about the haves and the have-nots. When you continually refer to a community as a place of have-nots, what does that do to that community? Then it's in your psyche that you are have-nots. In my world, nobody is a have-not. Everybody has something. We may have to look a little bit for it sometimes, but everybody has something. So I just reject the notion that part of our city has have-nots or anybody in our city is a have-not. Everybody has a gift.
And Jackie, I understand that in the context of having a gift and talent. But what we're talking about here is access to political power. We're talking about access to socioeconomic opportunity, access to capital to start your own business. And so when we're looking at the have-nots, there are people who do not have access to these things. And we need to be intentional in terms of the policies that we create that will give them equal access to opportunity.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you 150%. I would not refer to them as have-nots. I would refer to it as folks who don't have, there's not equity. there's not equity in our system, and that we have an unequitable system. We have a system that does not provide equity and opportunity for everyone. I just would not refer to people as have-nots.
Got it. Go ahead.
I want to emphasize, everybody up here is well-intentioned. Everybody up here wants the best for the city. But I note that some of my fellow candidates have made a litany of promises. These pie-in-the-sky dream worlds of streetcars running everywhere and beautiful redevelopment everywhere. Somebody has to pay for that. The money comes out of taxpayers' pockets. And one of the main reasons that people choose not to move here in the first place, or move away once they're already here, is because they think the tax burden is too high. I want to give you the particular example of streetcars. I'm proud that the media has referred to me as the most vocal opponent of the streetcars. I don't take pride in being Debbie Downer, but I'm saying the emperor has no clothes. It's a $53 million per mile boondoggle. And the people who support it, as does my friend and respectful fellow candidate, Councilmember Hodges, supporters of the streetcar line think that it's going to catalyze economic development. And they point to other cities and say, in these other cities, when we've put down a streetcar line, we've had economic development pop up next to the streetcar line. I grant the other side of this debate that yes, when you put down a streetcar line, in some cases, economic development has popped up next to it. But guess what? Oftentimes, the one didn't cause the other. It was handouts. It was a third separate force. It was TIF financing or straight up subsidies that caused that development to happen. I have a different view on economic development. I've shared it in detail earlier. And it's really boring, I grant you that. It's really boring to get into the nitty-gritty of regulation and business licensing and figure out how to cut that red tape and make it easier for people to start things here and grow them here. But that's the sustainable way to do economic development. Make it more attractive for people to come here and start here and grow here, rather than building a $53 million per mile streetcar line. And the last thing I'd say is that on transit, I absolutely support enhancements to our existing bus line so that everyone in our city can get from A to B, whether that's to go to a job or school or church or recreation or whatever. Heated bus enclosures with pay machines in those heated bus enclosures will dramatically enhance our bus routes for $2 million a mile rather than $53 million per mile.
Thank you, Cam. And we're going to go to a question from the audience, and then we'll start with you, Betsy, in terms of a response. Adam.
Excuse me. My name is Jeff Wagner, and there's a question from the audience. Is it possible that I have a moment here?
You can have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Hi, guys. I'm Jeff Wagner. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice
Mr.
to meet
Dan,
you again,
how are you,
Jeff.
sir? How are you? Hi, folks. I'm sorry about that. Basically, there's
Your mouth away.
380,000 people in Minneapolis, and where the heck are they? There's only 47 that are watching this. This is complete disgrace. People are letting media and money control their mind. Every one of these people is trying to do the right thing, even though you never know what is behind the curtain, kind of like a game show. But it's very sad. Media and money control what people vote for. And that's it. They're like sheep, and it's very sad. They're trying to get their message out, even though I don't agree with some of the messages. But my name is Jeff Wagner. I'm a candidate for mayor of Minneapolis. And all I want to do right now is just walk up. It's kind of like a game show. And check out our new music video, Rogue Anthem, because we are the Rogue.
All right, so thank you for that. We're going to keep the forum moving. We have a question from the audience. Adam Miller, could you come and take the microphone and ask your question, please? There's always a need for comic relief at these things.
Good evening, candidate.
Get your laughs out. I know that you want to. I want to.
Thanks for coming out. I won't be as exciting as that if that's a disappointment. But my name is Adam Miller, and I am a student here at the University of St. Thomas and a participant in the Community Justice Project, which is a civil rights clinic. As you may know, the Twin Cities metro area has the worst unemployment gap in the nation, where African Americans are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than whites. This Thursday, Take Action Minnesota is holding a community forum with the Target Corporation at the Capri Theater in North Minneapolis regarding strategies to close the racial jobs gap in our state. do you plan to attend this forum? And what will you do as mayor to help close the racial jobs gap that plagues our metro area?
Thank you. Let's start with you, Betsy.
I'm happy to start because I know for a fact it's on my calendar and I will be there on Thursday. I'm glad you guys are doing that. I think we've been talking a lot about the racial jobs gap and sort of what, you know, all of us are thinking about and what we want to do with that, and I appreciate the question. And as I said, you know, one of the things in terms of big picture is to make sure that we're growing the city. And I just wanted to respond to a couple things that Cam has said. I mean, first, absolutely we need to make sure it's easy for people to invest here, or easier than it is now. And I've been saying over and over, we need, you know, day one, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to ask for a comprehensive review of the regulations on small business, find out, you know, what's hampering us and get a more streamlined process. That's going to be part of it. That actually speaks to the issue you brought up, because that will make it easier for everybody to invest, including local entrepreneurs, folks in their neighborhoods, more able to invest in their neighborhoods. When it comes to the streetcar line,
Did I persuade you that time?
you did not persuade me that time, Cam. He asked if he persuaded me that time. You can look to other cities. What people invest around is rail, and you can look to other cities and see it, but you can also look to St. Paul and Minneapolis, where there has been $1 billion of private investment around the Central Corridor line, and it hasn't even opened yet. Huge investment that's happening already here around rail lines. And I will just say this, the arguments that I hear against streetcars are the same arguments that we heard about the Hiawatha line before it opened. And now everybody, you know, everybody wants light rail, everybody's on board, no pun intended. And so this is, you know, this is the question about the biggest picture and our biggest vision of the city of Minneapolis, as well as day-to-day, what do we do for folks, which is why when we were talking about the West Broadway streetcar line, we were also talking about the 5 and the 18 bus.
Did anyone else want to answer Adam's question? Go ahead, Dan.
You know, I think it begins with role models. I think it begins with the mayor himself having a staff that reflects the vision of this city. I'm on the Minneapolis Planning Commission. I can't believe it, there isn't a black person on the Minneapolis Planning Commission. I'm on the Minneapolis Charter Commission. There's one black person on the Minneapolis Charter Commission. That's ridiculous. There should be black people, people of color, people of different backgrounds on these city boards and agencies, and we're not doing it. And they should be in the mayor's office. And we should have these people working in all these city departments, being our role models for all the other people in this city. And I think it's important. This may not sound like a big deal, but I think this is the sort of thing that, at least on a personal basis, reflects where you actually, where your heart is, and why you believe in making this city a more diverse city where everybody has got a voice and everybody's got a face and everybody's part of it. I think that's an important thing to do.
Don.
Yeah, and Dan, that's why I'm going to strengthen and enlarge the Urban Scholars Program, where we had minority students, most of them were African American, who come into the city every summer, college students, to intern in every different departments and learn the city functions so that they become the next generation of employees at City Hall.
Let's end racism in the Minneapolis Police Department too, and you're a leader on that.
Yeah.
So why don't we get to that question? In recent months, the Minneapolis Police Department has come under fire for the use of racial slurs and high rates of alleged police misconduct against people of color. We all know that these allegations have been around for years, and no one has put a stop to it yet. Rather than change the culture in the department, the city has settled millions of dollars in police brutality lawsuits over the years. As mayor, what will you do to help transform the culture within the Minneapolis Police Department? And how will you ensure accountability by law enforcement and other government stakeholders? Why don't we start with you, Cam?
Thank you. 3 C's to the answer. 1, culture. 2, cameras. 3, oversight committee. On culture, I have experience leading an enterprise. When you lead an enterprise, you act as a role model for the traits you want to see. You make it really clear what the expectations are. When people live up to those expectations, you reward them for it, you incentivize them for it. And if they don't, you do some corrective feedback, and if they still don't get it, boom, they're gone. Because what you're maintaining is a platform, an enterprise, not a given individual's right to do anything, but the benefit of everybody. So here's how this applies to the police department. When I'm mayor, I will lead a transformation in the culture to make every officer not just empowered, but obligated to root out bad behavior, to apply peer pressure to their fellow officers, to say, dude, don't be that guy. If you hear him saying a slur, if you see somebody being overly aggressive, right now it appears to be the case that the culture is to just turn a blind eye. That can't be our culture anymore. I do want to state clearly that of the 850 officers, the vast majority of them are brave people of integrity who would put their safety and lives on the line to keep my kids safe. And I appreciate that, but we all know there are some bad apples there, and they've tolerated for far too long. 2, cameras. I do support continuing to work out the details of how we put on-body cameras on each officer. Some cities that have done it elsewhere in the United States have seen dramatic reductions in the allegations and actual incidents of police misconduct. And 3, committee. The current oversight committee I'm willing to give a little more time to, because Don Samuels says it's worth giving a little more time to. But if it doesn't start showing some real results really soon, I'm going to lose my patience, because we've seen, what, 400 allegations of misconduct with 0 findings of actual misconduct. It's not inspiring a whole lot of confidence as we all work for the goal we all share of rebuilding trust between our community and the police department.
Thank you. Mark? And then we'll go to Betsy.
Thank you very much. Obviously, a really huge problem in our city. The issue of police misconduct has a corrosive effect throughout the whole community. It's not just in the department. It has a corrosive effect in the whole community. And it makes our city diminished in the eyes of other communities who look at us because of the sorry record we have. I think it's very important for us to focus on several different areas. As a mayor, as a leader who has statutory and city charter responsibility for the police department. First of all, accountability. Accountability through the police chief to the mayor on the standards that we collectively set for proper police conduct on the part of our force. Number 2, transparency. We've got to have decision-making brought out into the open, which gets me to the panel that I want to make sure we have better transparency with, that we have subpoena powers issued to that panel so they can get to the bottom of some of these allegations that are made, and also involvement of more citizen final decision making in the instance of a tie vote. Also, training. A couple of people have touched on the notion of training. Unfortunately, it's really hard to untrain racism, and we have it in the police department. So we need to do a couple of things. Number 1, we need a more rigorous protocol for getting rid of officers who repeatedly are brought onto the firing line for allegations, because there are a handful who repeatedly get brought up on these charges. And number 2 is a longer-term solution. We got to have training, but we also have to do a better job recruiting from common communities of color that better reflect the characteristics and racial mix of our city.
Thank you. Betsy, and then Stephanie.
Thank you. And I think we get to spend less time at this stage describing the problem and more time solving the problem. Because I think that there's been a lot of conversation about what the problem is. And I've been working in my 8 years on City Council on police accountability issues. I've put out my police accountability platform. And then also, I believe, along with Cam, that and found the money to do a pilot project, and we'll be finding the money to do the rollout project of the body cams, the lapel cameras for officers, because of the impact it has on the reduction in numbers of complaints and reduction in actual use of force. Working out the details of that needs to happen. But having the money ready for it so we are ready to go, that is the leadership that I'm taking on the council right now, along with a couple of my colleagues. The police accountability platform starts at the beginning. Make sure we're hiring the right people, people who look like the community, and know that we're training them well so they know from day one what the expectations are. When they're on the force, make sure we have a good early intervention system so that we can catch problems before they become big problems, problems with individuals before they become problems for someone else. And then make sure the chief has the tools that she needs to handle misconduct and handle situations as they come up. We also need good civilian oversight. I didn't support the current plan because I didn't think that it had enough civilian oversight. It's been operating for a year. I think we need to give it some more time to see, I'm willing to give it some more time to see how those outcomes are, but I think right now we're already seeing that it's been good for getting people coaching, but not so good for getting actual results. So I shouldn't say actual results, but I would say getting the kind of discipline that we need for the situations. And it's not clear how they get those, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Betsy. Some would argue that a year has been long enough in terms of the expectations.
I would agree. The challenge is that the transition and the cases that they were dealing with were left over from the old and into the new. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but to get the results from the cases that actually started coming in after the OPCR was created, those are the outcomes and the results I want to see. One of the questions I've had, and I've already asked, is how are they deciding whether or not the Office of Police Conduct Review gets it or whether or not the Internal Affairs Unit gets it? Because both of those cases, the Green Bay and the Apple Valley cases, went straight to the IAU. It didn't go to the Police Conduct Review. And when I asked, I was told it was because the complaint came in at 2 in the morning. That's unacceptable.
Thank you. Stephanie and then Jackie.
Yeah,
I saw you, but their hand was up before yours.
Yeah, this is a big issue, and I've actually met with the chief, and I told her that she's got my 100% support. She is rolling out the new MPD 2.0, which is to ensure transparency, accountability, and integrity in the force. But the only way she's going to be able to do that is that she has the power to hold those officers accountable, period. Period. I don't care how much training you do. I don't care how much money we put into this. She has got to be the one to make those decisions, to hold those officers accountable. I was appalled, Professor, not only the racial comments, but actually the comments against her sexual orientation in Green Bay. I was offended by that. As a lesbian myself, I personally have met with her, and I can't even begin to tell you how she felt and how that made me feel. Embarrassing, pissed off, actually, that still happens today, especially in Minneapolis, that we're so proud to be so accepting. It's unacceptable. So I have told the chief that she has my 100% support, but with support comes accountability, that I will hold her accountable for this performance. We've got to invest in greater training. We've got to do all those things. Cameras, I'm not quite sure yet. I would never roll out an initiative or do a press release without having the chief right there signing off on it with anything, any of my direct reports. That's not my leadership style. I want them to own it, because when they own it, I will hold them accountable, and they will be held accountable for those results.
Thank you. Jackie. First.
I just want to piggyback on something Stephanie said. The comments by the officers in Apple Valley were terrible, but they also were terrible as a woman who's their boss. I can't imagine being in a job where you talk about your boss in any derogatory way and keep your job. I don't know. It doesn't work in my world. So, but I want to get back to the issue of accountability, and the fact of the matter is we need our city to be safe. The police are hired to keep our cities safe. We need them to be doing their job, and the vast majority of them are doing their job and doing it well. But the citizens need to trust the police too. And if the citizens aren't trusting the police, then they're not going to be able to do their job well. I have some experience with this. I had the unhappy experience when I was president of the council of some serious issues around police accountability. And what we did is we held the chief accountable, and he was no longer the chief. We fired the officer. We got sued, had to hire him back, but we've took the actions. Mayor Sales Belton and I took the action of making sure the officer was fired. Thirdly, we created the Civilian Review Authority. Was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect, but it was far better, and I think it had far more strength than the system that's there right now. I'm not interested in giving the system that's there right now any more time. A year is long enough. You can give every bureaucratic response for why you got to keep trying to do it, but the fact of the matter is sometimes you got to cut the cord and say, this isn't working, this isn't strong enough. I think this is not working, it's not strong enough, has to be more civilian representation on there. The chief should not have the tie-breaking vote, and we have to figure out how we get subpoena authority for that board.
Thank you. Dan, and then we have one more question from the audience. Not everyone will get to answer every question. There's flexibility.
I'm going to give Don half my time, okay?
Oh, perfect.
So there it is.
30 seconds.
Okay.
30 seconds.
I'll do it in 30 seconds. These guys should have been fired on the spot. Bang. I know Don doesn't think I should have done. I should have gone through the system and everything like that. There are times when you have to act. This is a time you have to act. Period. Their stuff should have been out of the locker and on the street before they got back from lunch. That's how you have to do something like this. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm a lawyer. I'm not afraid to take a lawsuit. You've heard that already in a previous conversation about Viking debt and the rest of it. You have to sometimes, there's no excuse for acting. You act, you fire them. And that will make an expression. That will make an impression. That's how you get it done. And from that point forward, you want to have a police department where the cops are afraid even to talk that way to their wives. That has to be the order of battle here. There isn't an institution in this country that would have tolerated that kind of behavior.
Dan,
St. Thomas would have fired him on the spot.
You said you were going to share your time.
I would have fired him on
Don.
the spot. Don's got the rest of my time.
Thank you, which is like 10 seconds at this point. I'm sorry that was your agreement. 10 seconds.
Okay.
Well,
this is leadership by catharsis. Okay? And when you lead by catharsis, you have problems. Whether you're a parent or a principal or a mayor, you have to be rational and protect the interests of your citizens by doing things the right way. You can't just fire people when they have the right to come back. You're going to have to rehire them, and it's a whole bunch of legal charges and nothing done. We're going to have to do it the right way. I do not tolerate any disrespect by the police of the community. That's why I was the first one to come out and say these guys should resign. Okay? So, we need to, but you notice I said they should resign, because I know if we fire them, they would be back just because we violated the process by which they should be disciplined.
Time. We have Jan Sandberg with the question. Where's that?
If I yell, will that work? Good. Okay, my name's Jan Sandberg. I live in the Loring Park community, and full disclosure. Hi, Dan. Hi, Jan. We're on the charter commission together. Anyway, okay, my question is this. It's totally different.
I'll bring you this. And we're going to be very quick to the closing.
Very quick. PV Plaza renovation had a plan, but ran into a few hiccups, including they don't have enough money. As mayor, how are you going to make something happen over there?
Not everyone needs to answer, but a couple people, 30 seconds. Go ahead, Cam.
How to make something happen, quote unquote, in PV Plaza, I think is a really good indication of how I would lead generally. The well is dry with city money. There is no magic pot of city money that we can keep spending on things that sound nice and things that we like. So it's going to take all the other sectors of society, the corporate sector, the philanthropic sector, the faith-based sector, to bring things together and build the city that we want on top of the government sector. So specifically with PV Plaza, I'm a member of the church that happens to be right across the street. Target headquarters is right across the way. We've got a lot of philanthropists who are engaged in downtown. I'd go to each of those stakeholders and say, what can we do to beautify PV Plaza and make it a real jewel and a beacon? But anybody who says we can keep spending city dollars on that kind of thing is pulling the wool over your eyes. We can't.
Thank you. Mark.
Obviously, city assets need to be maintained. So I respectfully disagree with a big chunk of what Cam just said. That's part of what the city has to do. We have capital obligations. We have obligations to our cultural institutions. We have obligations to balance the budget, but PV Plaza is a crucial piece of the Nicollet Mall redevelopment. And so we do have to address it respectfully. And so a lot of ways to skin a cat. Nobody's crazy about the notion of property taxes to finance all these projects, but it's in the queue as an important capital investment for our city. Public-private partnerships are something that I have a great deal of experience with, and I'll relate, if I might, just one example of where I was involved in a public-private partnership that didn't require property taxes. And
unfortunately, we don't have time to go into that description.
Okay.
But we did hear your answer, that we have to pay attention to PV Plaza.
So let me truncate
In 10
by
seconds.
saying, thank you, by saying public-private partnerships, interjurisdictional collaboration, and using property taxes as the funding stream of last resort, not the funding stream of first resort, to fund these projects.
Thank you. I have one question that is yes or no, and then after you answer this, I'm going to turn it over to Nick Coleman, and then from there you will have time for closing statements. All right, so the question is, do you support ranked choice voting? Yes or no? We can start with you, Mark.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yes, but next time around, Fair Vote's doing a fantastic job. Bravo to Fair Vote. We need 5 times as many Fair Vote folks and private money to pay for it. Because as I go around the city, just 2 weeks before Election Day, and I bet all of my fellow candidates would agree with this, there are very sharp, engaged people that have no idea how this system works. And that fact does not breed confidence in our democracy.
Yes, and I'll just say it's completely changed the dynamics of how an election is conducted in a very, very positive way.
Thank you. Nick?
Okay, thanks. And I guess that goes along your support for ranked choice voting. Anybody not, if you were to be mayor, you would continue, you would commit to ranked choice voting and make it even better, the system that has been instituted, yes? Anybody opposed to that? All right, well then, here's your other mission. We're going to ask you, you guys are all in love with each other. First of all, let's have a big round of applause for all of our candidates. We truly appreciate the time and the talent you brought to this debate today. But it's like you're the Minneapolis septuplets. How many times did you say, I love, I dearly love, I revere, I just think he's fantastic. So here is your assignment right now. Rather than many of you have told other media that basically you love all of your other opponents. You are to put down the initials of the one person here, and only one who you would like to see be mayor if it can't be you. Here you go. There's one for each of you. Pass the pen down. And we are going to take a little private ballot here after you're done. I don't want, well, they're all great, or, you know, him or her or him. Pass it down, fill it out, put them face down on the table, and we'll count them to see who is your true second choice.
Dan has the other.
Okay. Sorry?
We need to pass the ballot.
Yeah, just pass those down, Dan, and we'll count them up. So one more word on behalf of the Uptake. We are a nonprofit. We depend on the goodwill of our supporters, the people who think we're doing something important in the community. This is an example. And if it seems like you've heard a lot of this before, or you're very familiar with the candidates, it might be, in fact, it's very likely, because the Uptake has live streamed a number of these conversations. And if we weren't here, that wouldn't have happened, and you'd be really wondering what's going on in the race for Minneapolis mayor. And in fact, in June, at a low point in our funding cycle, we were unable to do live streaming from the Minneapolis DFL City Convention. which, as you know, turned out to be rather interesting. And we were seeing tweets all day. Where the heck is the uptake? Why isn't the uptake here? Well, you might be asking that question in the future, and we won't have an answer for you. So, just a little pitch for the uptake. We really appreciate Professor Nakima Levy-Pounds and your fine work here tonight as well. And I'm going to give this back to you. Are they all done? Are the ballots in?
Yes.
Okay.
So the ballots.
Take
will
them
be
out in the
counted.
hallway. After their closing statements, we are going to reveal. This is Halili from the uptake. And you have? Can you give us? Well, after the closing statements, we'll announce who is the consensus second choice among these fine candidates. Nakima, back to you. You can get their wrap up and closing statement.
Thank you. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. As Nick said, you all are really, really nice to each other and supportive of each other. So it'll be interesting to see what happened with the ballots. So as we conclude tonight, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to be here, sharing your insights, not just to the live audience, but also to those who were a part of the streaming process watching this live as well. You will each have 30 seconds to give concluding remarks. I say 30 because I know some of you will take 45 if you can. But take 30 seconds to give your best statement as to why you are the best candidate for mayor. Why don't we start with any volunteers? Jackie.
So I got volunteers.
Yes.
I'm Jackie Cherry Holmes, and I'm the best candidate for mayor because I have more experience than anyone else. I've done community organizing throughout our city. I've run a small business, and my campaign reflects the leadership that I will provide. My campaign has been a big tent, is a big tent. We have people from all walks of life, all parts of our city engaged in this campaign, and that's how I will lead as the leader of this city. Everyone will be engaged. Everyone will have a seat at the table. Everybody matters, and everybody will have an opportunity. I'm a person who believes in bringing people together, and I think that the beauty of ranked choice voting in this election is it's given us the opportunity to run for the city of Minneapolis and not against each other. And I think that the respect that you see among all of us up here is from 8 months of having spent this much time together. We know each other pretty well, and I think we genuinely like each other. And I think that anyone is qualified to be mayor, but I think that I am the best person to lead the city because I've got the experience, I know how to do the job, and I bring together a wide and diverse group of people and will ensure that everybody has opportunity in our city. I'm Jackie Cherry Holmes. I ask for your first place vote on November 5th.
Thank you.
To echo what Councilmember Cherry Holmes said, I really do respect and enjoy the company of my fellow candidates. To that end, the day after Election Day, when the city clerk is still counting the ballots, I propose we all go see Gravity in 3D in the theater with our teams, because I haven't had, yeah, let's just roll in. It'd be great. I do think I'd be the best mayor because I am the only one offering fresh eyes. I mentioned before, I'll say it again because I think it's that important, that I am the only person up here who's not an elected or an appointed official in the city and has never been. I built that company with my colleagues. Everybody's been able to thrive, and I want to see that story repeated. I want to restore that balance between property taxes paid in and services received so that people want to move to our city and don't move out because they're sick of the property taxes. And everything I've been able to do in my life, I've been able to do because of a great public school education. And so I encourage folks to do their homework on which candidates are willing to speak boldly about putting kids first. And I'm the only candidate proposing that the mayor have some appointments to the school board. Not full mayoral control by any means, but a voice at the table. I'm Cam Winton. I'm fiscally responsible, socially inclusive, offering fresh eyes and an independent voice. And I ask for your first choice vote 2 weeks from today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that James and Jeff Wagner got an opportunity to say hello. I also wanted to note that Merrill Anderson, another candidate, has also been here this evening. I think he just left, but I wanted to note that he was here. And I have spent a chunk of the night talking about my vision for the future of Minneapolis, to build and grow, to do it based on the common ground, not going back to, you know, the way of smoky back rooms and who your friends and all that sort of stuff, but investment in the common ground. And taking on our biggest challenge, which is the chasm, the gap we have between white people and people of color. I want to talk just for 10 seconds about values as well, because that is also something I bring to the table. That I say the same thing in this forum as I have said in every other forum, that I say in the events that I hold, that I say on the phone conversations that I have. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And I say the same thing so that when people sign on, we are signing on to a shared vision for the future of the city, and that we are all responsible to that vision for the future of the city, not beholden to any one special person or group. And that's what I bring to the table and I offer as mayor as well, is that vision and that value.
I'm Stephanie Woodruff, and I'm running to put people first. I jumped in late. I didn't have the fortune of 8 months. I've only been campaigning for 4. I'm a proud Democrat, but I'm honored to say that I'm endorsed by the Independence Party. I'm the only candidate out of 35 that has the endorsement of a major party. Why? And I've never ran before. Why? Because we share the same passion to put people first. But not only putting people first, but do it in a very open and transparent way. I am the only candidate that is running on that platform to put transparency first, because transparency builds trust, and trust is the foundation for great leadership and great teamwork within the city. That's what we need to get back to. My values, right, will be reflected in my budget. And those priorities will be to put the neighborhoods first. I will empower people from the bottom and make sure that everybody in this city has a chance to succeed. That's the only way we're going to disrupt this cycle of poverty, to make sure that Minneapolis is the city that works for all.
And you got the coolest hair.
Well, I'm Don Samuels, and I want to be your next mayor. And, you know, as has been said before, all of us here have the city's best interest at heart. We have different ways of getting there. But there's some things we have in common about transit, about making sure we have a strong economic, we're a strong economic force, that we have a great downtown, that we have a great arts community, etc. But I'm the candidate who has gone the furthest upstream in thinking about and creating solutions for what ails our city, has been described as the greatest gap between white people and people of color, about our failure in the educational system, and the challenge of our community. My wife and I live it. We do not just talk about it, we dream it, we sleep it, we eat it, and we are it. Okay. And so you're getting a mayor who is bringing a passion, a level of passion for closing these gaps that nobody else on this podium possesses. And so if you want to hear more talk about the problem, the mayors have come through this great city, and still the problem persists. So just talk is not going to solve it. You need someone whose life and whose efforts and successes demonstrate the most likely probability of solving this problem. And R.T. Ryback, who has finally put education at the top of his agenda, says the next mayor must put it first, and Don Samuels is the one who has the best plan to do it and the guts to see it through. That's the present mayor said that. So I offer myself up as the declared solution. Thank you.
I'm Dan Cohen. I'm an independent candidate for Mayor of Minneapolis. There are 3 great jobs in this country: mayor of your city, governor of your state, president of your nation. You're a leader from day one. Mayor is best, because this is the one where you're closest to the people. Whatever happens in your city, you are part of it. Every one of the people on this podium would make a good mayor someday, but I'm ready now. So I'm asking for your first choice vote. Thank you.
Every time. I love it every time.
That may be the best line of the mayor's race. Love that. I'm Mark Andrew. I'm running for mayor because I believe I have the vision, the compassion, the drive, the intelligence, the collaborative skills, and the innate ability to make this city an even greater city. I have a long history in progressive politics. I was the first president of MPIRG all the way back to college. I worked on the county board as a major leader, chairman of the county board 4 terms, former chairman of the Minnesota DFL party, founder of a green marketing company that made Target Center the greenest ballpark in the world. A mayor has to have 3 major qualities. Everybody up here pretty much agrees on most issues. But a mayor is a different job from any other elected job. It is an external job. It is a forward-looking job, and a mayor has to have, number one, a big, bold vision. I have a 30-year history of advancing a big, bold vision. A mayor has to be an expert collaborator because we can't solve our problems alone by going it alone. And finally, the mayor has to have the intestinal fortitude, the guts, to actually advance the agenda and get it on the table. I have a history of doing that. I did it with light rail transit. I did it with the Midtown Greenway. I did it in creating the recycling program. I did it as an advocate for women's rights. I did it as an advocate for LGBT. It's why I'm endorsed by the Young Democrats. It's why I'm endorsed by the My DFL. It's why I'm endorsed by Stonewall DFL. It's why I was the biggest vote getter at the DFL City Convention. I am a leader. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you once again. It's a wonderful opportunity to hear from you all. It's too bad we can't go back to the days of ancient Rome and you could all be a committee of mayors. But we're going to try to find out now. We'll try to find out now. This is a very important. Who is first runner-up? In case the mayor, you get to vote for 3 choices on November 5th. We'll find out who the new mayor is on November, anybody has an estimate? 6th. But in case you're unable to serve, the consensus choice, if there is one, for first runner-up, Mayor of Minneapolis in the 2013 election, Halili, do we have a...
There's a tie.
Oh, no.
Wait, we're going to vote over again and use ranked choice. No. All right, who are our... okay, why don't you...
Okay, Jackie Cherry Holmes and Cam Winson both got 2 votes each.
It's a landslide. Cherry Holmes and Winton selected as the most likely or best qualified candidate to be mayor. Once again, thank you to the University of St. Thomas for putting on or letting us use their facility for the event. Thank you so much for the candidates. Thank you for watching or paying attention to this race. We wish Minneapolis and all of you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys.